Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josh Bender, the CEO of the Bender JCC of Greater Washington. I want to welcome everyone to our community Yom HaShoah commemoration. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. How beautiful is it for us to all be together in person on this special day. A special welcome to our friends at the County Council and members of the state government who are here during this important moment for our community. In many ways, I think the JCC is the perfect place to gather today. We are a Jewish organization committed to Jewish values and tradition while being welcoming to all. One of our community members likes to refer to our JCC as an antidote for anti-Semitism. We are living joyful Judaism while building bridges with individuals and families from all faiths, backgrounds, abilities, and identities. This is truly a gift. I want to thank the JCRC team led by Ron Halber for their tireless work in putting today's program together, and for the support that they give us 365 days a year to ensure that we can do the work that we do. They are really true partners and friends. Last week, on the eve of Yom HaShoah, I attended a funeral of a Holocaust survivor who was a longtime member of the JCC, Manny Kandel of blessed memory. During the eulogy, the rabbi shared remarks that Manny had made a year ago at a Yom HaShoah program at his synagogue. When Manny saw the images and the look of terror on Shira Bibas's face on October 7th while being taken hostage by Hamas, clenching her beautiful children to her chest, he reflected on the fear that his own mother must have felt while she was clenching him at 4 years old, hiding from the Nazis in the forest of Ukraine during the Holocaust. His mother also had red hair, and that really was a very poignant moment for him. Anti-Semitism, as we know, is not a relic of the past. It is alive and well. We have seen this before. Manny had seen this before. Many of you have seen this before. This is why we're here today. Thank you for coming together as a community, and thank you for the honor to host this commemoration at the JCC.
Welcome, everybody. It's so good to see everyone. This is the first time in 5, 6 years now, maybe 7, that we've been able to do this in person. I'm Ronald Paul. I'm the Montgomery County Chair for today's annual JCRC Yom HaShoah commemoration. And over the years, it's been my pleasure to be associated with this program. And I've met so many wonderful people through this who've enriched my life. I was going to talk about some of the prior speakers, but most of them were not able to come today. I want to read you a heartfelt composition that explains why we're here today. It's called We Remember. We remember not only with our minds, but with our hearts. We remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered simply for being who they were, and the millions more who were targeted for their identity, beliefs, or resistance. We remember the mothers who held their children's hands until the very end, the fathers who whispered prayers into the wind, the children who never had the chance to grow old. We remember the ghettos, the camps, the cattle cars, the numbers on the arms, the silence of the world that watched, and the brave souls who resisted anyway. We remember the survivors, those who crawled out of the ashes and built lives in our new lands, carrying unimaginable loss inside them, yet still choosing love, family, language, music, and laughter. This is an emotional thing. So we remember the rescuers, righteous among the nations, who risked everything to hide a neighbor, forge a paper, whisper a warning. We remember because forgetting is the second death. We remember, we remember because hate has not vanished. We remember because anti-Semitism still walks among us, often cloaked in new language and new masks. We remember because the Holocaust did not begin with gas chambers. It began with words, laws, lies, and silence. We remember to honor those who cannot speak, and to ensure the world never again will we be turned away. We remember, and in doing so we promise, never again. I repeat, never again.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Budoff. I am the JCRC Board President. It's a privilege to be here today among so many survivors and their family, dignitaries, and community members in remembrance of the 6 million. This annual program reflects the JCRC's sacred obligation to honor Holocaust victims, survivors, and liberators in the DMV, and to ensure the lessons of the Shoah are passed on to ensure that for the future generations, through year-round programs like Magid, which trains children of survivors to share their families' Holocaust narratives with students. We also work closely with elected officials throughout the region to advocate for enhanced Holocaust education and awareness. Here in Maryland, we have an excellent relationship with Governor Wes Moore and Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller. Unfortunately, they both wanted to be here today, were not able to, and we instead are showing a heartfelt video message to share with you from them. Thank you.
Hi, it's Governor Wes Moore.
And your Lieutenant Governor, Aruna Miller.
And we are honored to help commemorate Yom HaShoah with you, and so grateful that so many of you are here today to honor the lives of the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. We must continue to uplift the voices of the survivors while we still have the privilege of them living amongst us. It's our moral responsibility and the moral responsibility of our generation and the next to make sure that we never forget.
Thank you to our friends at the JCRC of Greater Washington and the Bender JCC for facilitating such a meaningful event. Ensuring that the Holocaust is never forgotten is vital work.
And these are difficult times, but we will get through them together. And we must continue to recommit ourselves to combating anti-Semitism and hate in all forms, today and forever. We must bring the 59 hostages home and know that the Moore-Miller administration will always support Maryland's Jewish community.
Let me share with you the words of the prophet. This is Isaiah as he speaks about the resurgence of our people. And a shoot shall spring forth from the stump of Jesse, and a twig shall sprout from its roots. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and heroism, a spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. And the wolf shall live with the lamb, and a leopard shall lie down with the kid, and a calf and a lion cub shall lie together, and a small child shall lead them. They shall neither harm nor destroy on my holy mount, for the land shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the water covers the sea. I want to say a few words about how difficult it is to live in the middle of prophecy. For indeed, out of what was cut down from our people did we spring forth, vital and strong and beautiful. They tried to erase us, and yet somehow or another, we are here in a way around the world that inspires creativity and love and strength and understanding, a depth of commitment and a quality of character. And yet, at the same time, the rest of this prophecy, a prophecy of peace and of lack of fear, is not here. When I was 19 years old, in my hometown of Los Angeles, I watched on the network news children being let out from a JCC not a few miles from where I had grown up. This was a few months after the Columbine shooting, because a man had driven 2 states over to take an automatic weapon inside and to open fire. And I remember at the age of 19 being horrified, but somehow not surprised. Not surprised because I had received Holocaust education, and I knew, I understood from the way that I had been raised, that the seeds of anti-Semitism and of hatred lie buried shallow. I could not have imagined, however, that in this day and age, despite the fact that certainly physically as a people we are stronger than we ever have been, we actually have to deal even more with the old evils raising their heads to us once again, along with a whole host of new problems as well. And what I believe is we who live between these two prophecies, between a prophecy of resurgence and a prophecy of redemption, between a moment of our survival and our thriving and a moment of peace and understanding, that it will take every ounce of who we are and every quarter of our soul in order to find a world that is better than this one. It will take our strength, but not just our strength, it will take our compassion. And not just our compassion, but it will take our courage. And not just our courage, but it will take our wisdom. And not just our wisdom, but it will take our resolve. We are a people who can neither rely on the mercies of the world around us, nor can we achieve a vision of a world redeemed without the partnership of the nations that surround us. This is the paradox of what it means to be a Jewish person and part of the Jewish people, and also part of our mandate to be a light amongst the nations. And yet I am a believer, and thus, as I believe in the resumption of one prophecy, I believe in the fulfillment of the next as well. For we are a people who have a talent for survival and a gift for thriving. I believe that we will find our way to a world that is more just and more safe, more kind and more true. I believe that we will bat away all of the illusory promises of security or safety this way or other shortcuts on a road to a better world, and rather to stiffen our spine and to gird our loins and to fill our hearts for the work ahead.
Just for your information, that song is by Robert Dauber, who composed it in Terezin and was killed at age 26.
I am Ira Bartfield,
And I'm Al Bloomfield.
and we are both members and co-chairs of the JCRC Holocaust Committee. It is a privilege to play a small role in remembering the 6 million victims of the Holocaust and pay tribute to the survivors joining us today. Your courage and strength is an inspiration to everyone.
We also acknowledge the family members of both victims and survivors whose mere existence is a testament to overcoming unspeakable evil.
We will now invite members of our community to light candles in memory of the 6 million lost souls.
Please come forward when your name appears on the screen to light your candle, during which time recorded remarks from each of you will play.
Меня зовут Зиновий Сигалов. Мне 85 лет. На четвертый день войны, 26 июня 1941 года, мама с двумя детьми, то есть со мной и с младшим моим братом, ему было тогда 4 месяца, была эвакуирована из Смоленска на Урал. Сначала мы делали остановку в Калуге, немцы бомбили нас, и мама пряталась в пшенице с нами. Ну, а потом приехали на Урал. Я, конечно, о первых днях войны ничего не помню. Помню многое, начиная с 1943 года. Но это уже были для нас мирные дни, это уже в тылу. Вот. Помню, конечно, что было очень трудно с едой. Не было... Была картошка немножко и хлеб. Хлеб трудно, хотя его надо было менять на что-то другое, потому что хлеб был, но мало. И в 1944 году нас перевезли в город Куйбышев, теперь называется Самара. Непосредственно в нашей семье никто на оккупированной территории не был, к счастью, и никто не был в концлагерях. Вот. Мы были просто эвакуированы. Ну, мне, как ребенку войны, тоже было очень и очень непросто, потому что всегда надо было искать еду. С едой было плохо. Где-то только с 1945 года стало немножко получше. Ну, пожалуй, мне больше сказать сейчас, наверное, нечего. Спасибо.
My name is Suzanne Mayer Tarika. I am lighting a candle on Yom HaShoah to remember my aunts, uncles, and cousins who were killed by the Nazis. Paula, Leo, and Friedel Hein, Bertha, Zishmund, and René Lazare, Mimi, Moritz, and Carlo Mayer. May their memory be a blessing.
Hello, my name is Pauline Steinhorn. Today I honor my Polish mother, Harriet Steinhorn Roth, who was thrown into a Nazi slave labor camp at 13 and liberated from Bergen-Belsen days after her 16th birthday. Determined not to forget the countless relatives and friends who did not survive to tell their own stories, Mom studied and became a Holocaust educator and speaker. My brothers and I grew up understanding the importance of tolerance, forgiveness, and compassion. At the end of her school talks, Mom stressed the importance of standing up to bullies. If we don't stop them, she said, they will believe they can get away with anything, and we don't want that. As the history of the Holocaust demonstrates, if hate and prejudice is not addressed early on, stereotypes can escalate to discrimination and violence. We must never stop fighting for life over horror.
Hello, my name is Steve Silberstein. I'm the child of a survivor. I am lighting this candle in memory of my father, Michael Silberstein, who survived the Lodz Ghetto, Auschwitz, and was liberated by Americans at the Mauthausen concentration camp when he was 15. Prior to us attending the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz with him in 2020, he had the following message for the next generation.
First of all, I want them to know that life is not always easy. You have to work to achieve. Nobody is going to give you anything or hand it to you. You shouldn't even expect it. We are not all the same. We are different. We have different cultures, different religions, different likes and dislikes, different sense of values. We do have that. But we can live together peacefully in spite of these differences. The differences are not going to go away. What we must learn is how to accept those differences. That is a big challenge for all of us, then, today, and tomorrow.
Hi, my name is Amy Haddad, and I'm here today on behalf of the 3G community in DC. I'm here in memory of my grandfather Simon, a survivor of the Lodz Ghetto and of Auschwitz. And I'm here in honor of my grandmother Rita, who turned 96 just a few days ago. As a child in Berlin, she witnessed Kristallnacht just a few days after her father and brother were deported as part of the Poland Action. I believe it's more important than ever that our generation continue telling our grandparents' stories, especially in light of current events. Thank you so much for having me.
On behalf of the Embassy of Israel, I wanted to thank the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington and the Bender JCC for bringing us together for this meaningful and solemn commemoration. Yom HaShoah is a profoundly personal day for all of us. We remember the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, not as numbers, but as individuals. Mothers and fathers, grandparents, children, dreamers, entire worlds lost. We light a candle in their memory and in honor of those who survived and rebuilt Jewish life with resilience, faith, and hope. As Deputy Chief of Mission of the Embassy of Israel, as an Israeli, as a Jew, I carry that legacy every day. With remembrance comes responsibility to confront anti-Semitism, to speak out against hatred, and to stand proudly for who we are. Never again must be more than just words. It must be a promise we live by. May the memory of the victims be a blessing, and may their light continue to guide us.
Rachel Goldfarb could not make it and be with us today. Therefore, Marcia Teschler will recite the pledge.
I invite survivors who are able to and wish to recite this pledge with me. We take this oath. We take it in the shadows of flames, whose tongues scar the soul of our people. We vow in the name of our dead parents and children. We vow with our sadness hidden, our faith renewed. We vow we shall never let the sacred memory of our perished 6 million brethren be forgotten or erased. We saw them hungry, in fear. We saw them in the loneliness of night. We saw them at the threshold of death, true to their faith. We received their silence in silence. We merged our tears with theirs. We are the remaining witnesses of deportations, executions, mass graves, death camps, mute prayers, hidden souls and cries of revolt, the young, the old, the rich and poor, the ghetto fighters, the partisans, the scholars and the messianic dreamers, the tradesmen and the businessmen, the Hasidim and the Misnagim. Like a cloud, we saw them vanish. We take this oath. Vision becomes word to be handed down from father to son, from mother to daughter, handed down from generation to generation. Zachor, remember what the Nazi murderers and their accomplishments did to our Jewish people. Remember them with rage and contempt. Remember what an indifferent world did to us and to itself. We must also remember the good deeds of the righteous Gentiles. In 1981, we took this oath in Israel near the Kotel. There, we handed down a legacy to our children in the shadows of the flames of 6 symbolic candles. Tonight, at this assembly, we reaffirm our oath in the shadows of the flames of these 6 Yortzeit candles, honoring the memory of our 6 million Achenu B'nai Yisrael, our Jewish brethren. We take this oath. Our memory will become words, words of history of the Holocaust, to be handed down from generation to generation, midor ledor. Unsere Kedoshim wir werden nach Kemel nicht vergessen.
I invite all second-generation children of survivors to stand as you're able and recite together with me. We, who are your sons and daughters, belong to a generation in which every attempt was made for us to never exist. We, who represent your victory and your triumph over evil of unthinkable dimensions, accept the responsibility to preserve and protect the legacy of the Holocaust. We pledge to commemorate. We pledge to educate. We pledge to forever remember. We pledge to you, our mothers and fathers, who suffered in ways which words cannot describe, that our commitment is an everlasting commitment for this generation and for every generation to come. We dedicate this pledge to our beloved grandmothers and grandfathers who never lived to see us. We pledge to always remember who we are, where we come from, and also the traumas our grandparents endured and survived. Educate people of other ethnic, religious, and cultural groups about our grandparents' experiences. Commit to use lessons of the Holocaust and to support justice, tolerance, peace, kindness, and compassion, and accept survivors' memories and to pass them on to future generations.
I invite all third-generation grandchildren of Holocaust survivors to stand if you're able and recite the following. We, who are your grandchildren, will carry on the survivors' legacy to prove to ourselves and to others that we can carry on your victory, as well as to memorialize those loved ones who perished in the Holocaust. We pledge to always remember who we are, where we came from, and also the traumas our grandparents endured and survived. Educate people of other ethnic, religious, and cultural groups about our grandparents' experiences. Commit to use lessons of the Holocaust to support justice, tolerance, peace, kindness, and compassion, and accept survivors' memories and to pass them on to future generations.
Recognizing the rise of anti-Semitism and other forms of hate across the United States and the world, and remembering those who were murdered in the Holocaust. Believing that the spread of bias and prejudice can be stopped and fought, emphasizing that a unique opportunity now exists to reverse this pattern. I pledge to work to fight hate, bias, violence, and discrimination. I commit to using the lessons of the Holocaust to support justice, tolerance, peace, kindness, and compassion. I commit to living a proud Jewish life in the memory of the 6 million who did not have that chance, and to preserve our collective Jewish future.
We rise as we're able. Shochen mamrohim hamsei menucha Nechona al kanfei hashchina b'mahalot kedoshim u'tohorim kezohar ki amachzirim et kol haneshmot shel 6 milyonei haYehudim Chalilei HaShoah Baropa Shenehergu Shenishchetu Shenisrafu V'shenasfu Al Kiddush Hashem
בידי המרצים הנאצים ועוזריהם. אנא בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם, ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימים, ונאמר Amen. God, full of mercy, who dwells high, grant proper rest under the wings of the divine presence in the great heights of the holy and pure, who, like the brilliance of the heavens, shine to all the souls of the 6 million Jews slain in the European Holocaust, who were killed and slaughtered and burned and destroyed in sanctification of God's name at the hands of the Nazi murderers and their assistants. Therefore, may the God of mercy shelter them in the shelter of God's wings for eternity and bind their souls in the bond of life. The Almighty is their inheritance. May the Garden of Eden be their resting place, and may they stand for their destiny in the end of days. And let us all say, Amen.
Good afternoon. I'm Ellen Blaylock, a member of the JCRC Board of Directors and co-chair of JCRC's Virginia Holocaust Committee. It is my great privilege and pleasure to introduce this year's Yom HaShoah keynote speaker, Holocaust survivor, Colonel Frank Cohn. Colonel Cohn's World War II era memories weave his history as a German Jew living under Nazi persecution into his experiences as a U.S. Army intelligence agent fighting against the hatred and oppression that drove him out of his homeland. From his birthplace in Breslau, Germany, he arrived in the United States in 1938 as a 13-year-old emigre, returning to Europe in 1944 as a drafted and naturalized American soldier. After the war, he traveled again, back to the United States to live a meaningful and purposeful life, contributing much to his new homeland. A frequent speaker at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, Colonel Cohn is quite literally living history. We are so fortunate to be able to learn from him. Today, we are honored to be witnesses to a Holocaust eyewitness, to remember, to mourn, and to commit ourselves to building a more just and peaceful world. Colonel Cohn will tell us what was. We know that intolerance and indifference did not die at the war's end. They are a dark cloud that continue to shadow us. What will be is a history we still have to write. Thank you, Colonel Cohn, for sharing your journey with us. Thank you for leading us from memory to action, inspiring us with your courage and wisdom as we move forward to restore hope and wholeness to all who are in peril in today's world. Thank you for teaching us that each of us can and must make a positive difference, as you did. And now, Colonel Frank Cohn.
Thank you for the introduction. I think I should quit right now. I'm way ahead. Well, in any event, let me tell you about the story of my escape. And if it had been any misfire, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I was born in August of 1925 in the city of Breslau in Germany. And I was by the way, that is no longer on a map. It's now Wrocław, Poland. Anyway, I was an only child, and we were a comfortable middle-class family. We had a sporting goods store that took care of our economic being, and we, like many of the middle-class Europeans, had a live-in maid, and when I came along, they hired another girl to take care of me. We had quite a number of German friends, and of course, we had our Jewish community all along. Everything was really in a wonderful shape in the 1920s of Germany. But when the 1930s approached, the dark clouds started to gather. The anti-Semitism started to pick up. Now, we have that today, don't we? And many have said that what happened in Germany just before Hitler is very similar that we have today. So let's see where we are on that. Very early in the game before Hitler, my uncle in another city in Chemnitz was accosted by a number of Nazi uniformed stormtroopers, and when they confirmed that he was Jewish, they killed him. Now, at that time, legal proceedings started to take, and of course, this was discussed in my home. Nobody explained anything to me. A kid isn't taken into confidence in these type of things, but a kid listens and draws his own experience and his own knowledge on this. And of course, I learned that Nazis were the enemy of Jews, and I was a Jew. It was my enemy that they were talking about. On the streets, Jews were, when they were recognized as Jews, were cursed very often, and in some instances they were even assaulted. And of course, when that occurred, then all the Jews tried to lessen the visibility of Jewishness as much as possible. I remember that we always had to walk to the synagogue on the Sabbath, and when we walked, we had our prayers and prayer school, prayer shawls with us, and my father now placed those into a briefcase so they would not be obvious, so we would not be identified as Jews as we were walking along in the streets toward the synagogue. There were, in the newspapers, attacks when that were discussed about the prominent Jewish politicians or judges or whoever was in the government, and they were besmirched with lies. And in addition to that was publicized about these people, the general community of the Jews were also attacked in the newspapers. As far as the other Germans are concerned, most of them, just about all of them, were very passive about that. Nobody spoke up in our favor, in our support. All this was moving towards the 1930s, to the 1933, when Hitler came to power. So just before that, there were more and more Nazis, anti-Semites moving into the government until Hitler had not a majority, but he had a solid plurality of adherents, so that when President Hindenburg had to form another government in 1933, he had to pick Hitler as the foremost person to take over the government. And of course, once he took over the government, he never let go. And it wasn't very long after he took over the government that the changes became very apparent to the Jewish community. As far as we were concerned, there were stormtroopers in front of our store with signs that said, "Don't buy from Jews. Germans know that the Jews are our disaster." And my father saw this and recognized that this was going to be a losing proposition. And he sold the store as quickly as he could, and we got as much money out of it as was possible. And then he and my mother turned to another way of earning money. He got bales of cloth that he was selling to tailors and to others who used these bales of cloth, as many as he could. Of course, it wasn't quite the same type of income as we had from the store, and we had to move to a cheaper apartment. Now, as far as I was concerned, I used to play with German kids in the sandbox. And as soon as Hitler came in, suddenly the kids never showed up. And I asked my mother, "How come my playmates aren't here?" And she explained to me that the adults apparently didn't want their kids to play with a Jewish kid, and therefore they didn't come anymore. So that was the end of my playing in the sandbox. I started school in 1932, and I can't remember much about my first class teacher. He was old. He must have been at least 50. But my second grade teacher, well, he was a young, energetic fella, and I really loved him. He was just great. And I thought he really liked me too. And when I heard that he was coming back into the third grade, I was all excited. I was waiting for him to come. And then he came in full Nazi uniform. My heart just dropped. Here, my ideal was a Nazi. He was my enemy. He certainly wasn't going to like me. What was going to come next, I was afraid. But Herr Schubert, which was his name, Schubert, he didn't want any trouble in his class, and he wanted to keep order. So when kids started to try to pick on me, he wouldn't allow it. But the kids all came in some paraphernalia with the Hitler Youth uniform, wearing a cap or a belt or a strap and a shirt. The big difference came when they had to sing their Nazi songs. I was directed to stay seated while everybody else was directed to stand. And as they sang their song, I just sat there. And of course, the kid who sits while everybody stands is never going to be much of a popular kid. I was sort of excluded from everything that was going on, but order was in class. Now, after school, that was a different story, and I was cursed many, many times as I started to go home. And then one day, I could see they were going to pick on me, and I started running, and they were chasing after me, but I was a pretty good runner, and I was able to outrun them. And when I told my parents what had happened, they decided that they had to take some action, and they transferred me from the German public school to the Jewish private school. And that was while I was all in with boys in the public school, this was a mixed group in the private school. And I really didn't know what to do with girls because I was the only child. I had no experience at all, and they scared me. But I was comfortable in the group, and I certainly felt accepted. And I had already developed an inferiority complex, and this started to be alleviated a little bit as I was in that comfortable Jewish public school. In 1935, the laws changed, and there was definite segregation legally directed to separate the Jews from the Aryans. And no German was allowed to work for Jews, and our maid had to be let go. Now, that would have been a very dramatic and traumatic experience for me because she was almost like a second mother. I was in her tower most of the time as my parents were working. And but a year before, in 1934, Hitler was coming to Breslau, and our maid, Berta was her name, she wanted to see Hitler. And she had me in tow and told me, when we get to see Hitler, you render the Hitler salute. And I said, I'm Jewish, I'm not allowed to do that. She said, you just do exactly what I tell you. And Hitler came by in his convertible sedan, and they went ape. They were yelling, Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil, victory hail. And Berta was screaming along with all the others, and I couldn't understand how she would love somebody who obviously would have nothing to do with me. It was that incident that made it a little more palatable for me to lose Berta, because I remembered that, and I had hesitations about her relationship to my family. But after 1935, things got worse and worse. We couldn't go to any restaurants anymore because restaurants had signs that said, Jews not desired. Or in a rougher restaurant, it was Jews, Juden verboten, Jews prohibited. Well, as far as I was concerned, my parents kept turning to me, and I understood what they were talking about, because what they said to me was always behave, behave, behave. never make any type of drama in the streets. We should never become the attention of the public because they would recognize that we were Jews, and goodness knows what would happen to us. And I knew I had to behave. Well, 1938 came along, which was the year of my bar mitzvah, and I had to study for that, of course. There was 2 kids that had bar mitzvah that same day, but somehow I won the gamble, and I could say the maftir, and I had one portion of the Torah. And I was happy to study that, and I think I did pretty good because I got commendations afterwards, and I got all kinds of presents. I got a BMW bicycle, the first one, and then goodness how many pen and pencil sets because people don't know what to give you. Anyway, I was in ecstasy, you might say, after the bar mitzvah, and then my father took me aside and he said, you know, my name was Franz in those days, but I don't tell that to people anymore. Anyway, he said, Franz, I have to do something different because I can't support the family economically anymore. I have some distant relatives in the States, and I'm going to visit them and get an affidavit. Now, an affidavit is a document that invites you to immigrate to the United States with a proviso that you should not become a burden to the government. Well, my father left on a visitor's visa to the States, and he reported back that he found his relatives, but because of the Depression, they were all in a terrible economic state, and they could not give him an affidavit. Now, he thought that was a bit of a catastrophe, and he had to stay longer to see if he could find somebody who might give him an affidavit. Now, that was a lucky thing, because since he stayed longer, he missed the Gestapo that came to our door during his absence. And they talked to my mother, and my mother said that Martin Cohn is on a business trip, on an international business trip in the States, and she was instructed that the minute he returned, he was to report to Gestapo headquarters. Now that raised a red light in her brain, and I understood that too because I knew the story. A business acquaintance of ours by the name of Michaelis had been instructed to report to Gestapo headquarters. And a few hours after that, they found him dead on the sidewalk in front of the headquarters. He had either jumped or been pushed out of a third-story window. So my mother immediately wrote my father not to come back, that he would be arrested if he came back. And a few days later, a British lady came to our door with an official document that stated that we had to provide her with a bedroom in our apartment. And my mother took me aside and said, this woman is a Gestapo informant, and if you or I have anything important to say, we have to go outside for a walk or something. And I understood that. But, you know, the lady was very nice. She gave me 2 English lessons. She really was British. And I didn't realize how important that was going to be for later on. Anyway, a few days later, my mother said, let's go for a walk. And I knew immediately that meant there was something serious to be discussed. And as soon as we were outside, she turned to me and said, shall we go? And I knew what she meant. She meant that we were going to have to escape. Now, I had all kinds of friends in Breslau. I was on a soccer team. I had a good position. It was a Jewish team, and we could only play Jewish other teams, but I was very happy in that situation. And my class was a wonderful class. I loved the teachers as well as the students. I was comfortable there, and I had all my relatives still in the States. There was so many things that were pushing me to stay in Germany, but I said, and that was probably the smartest thing I ever did in my whole life. I said, let's go. And my mother then went to the American consulate, and she got herself a visitor's visa. And we were lucky they didn't have computers in those days, because had they realized that my father was already in country, she would never have gotten a visitor's visa, because she wouldn't be a visitor, she would be an obvious refugee, and refugees were really not desired in the States at that time. Well, the next day, completely out of character, she went back to the consulate and bribed an official to put me on the visa, which was actually very simple to do because I was in her passport, and all they had to do was write in "with France," and I was on the visa, and we were now available to escape. And certainly, one fine day, she turned to me and said, "Tomorrow we're going to leave." Well, I had one more soccer game to play, and I went out, and well, I was distracted, and I helped them lose the game. But at the end, I said, "See you next time." But I knew there wasn't a next time, and my mother had told me never to tell anyone that we were leaving. And of course, I never ever heard as to what happened to those kids, because if somebody hadn't taken some action by then, they probably, most of them, wouldn't have survived the Holocaust. Anyway, the next morning we snuck out of the apartment, and Mrs. Griffiths didn't hear us, and we got on a train, and we went to Berlin, where my mother said goodbye to her father, and she said goodbye to her oldest sister, and she was never going to see them again because her father was killed in the concentration camp just a short while thereafter. And her oldest sister was able to escape to Australia, which was out of reach for us with the money, with the reduced money that we had once we were in the States after all this. Well, I'm starting to run out of time, so I will have to cut this pretty short. But we went to Holland, and we went onto our Holland-America line, the Statendam, and had first-class passage, because my mother could arrange anything within, before we left. She got us first-class passengers on the Holland-America line, and 2 weeks of first-class hotel reservations. What else was it going to be with the money? Because all we were allowed to take with us was 1 suitcase and 10 marks. Visitors leaving Germany, not just Jews, anybody, because Germany wanted to keep its money in country, we could only take out 10 marks and 1 suitcase. Everything was going to be left behind. And in retrospect, you can see the type of hero that my mother was, that she was able to say, "To heck with everything, we will just leave with what we can carry out of here and let them loot the rest of it as they did. Well, we arrived in New York on the 30th of October, 1938. On the 9th of November, 1938 was Crystal Night. We had avoided Crystal Night. And of course, you know about Crystal Night. They smashed all the glasses in the stores that were still in Jewish hands, and they burned the synagogues, and they arrested every male that they could get their hands on, and we had avoided this, and my father had avoided it. And but we were worried about our relatives who were still behind, and there was no news to be gotten. The papers had all the information about Crystal Night, but they, of course, didn't have any information about our relatives. The irony of it, of course, was that while this disaster of the Jews ended up saving us because President Roosevelt issued an executive order that indicated that no one would be forced to return to Germany if they were in country. And our visas were thereby extended indefinitely, and we were saved. Well, of course, the rest of our family that was still in Germany was in great jeopardy. Some of them escaped. There were 9 countries that they went to, but then it all consolidated into 3 places, the United States, Israel, and Australia. And there were many, many Germans that were caught. And why were they caught? Actually, they had all the years from 1933 till 1939 when the war broke out to get out of Germany. But they were all, the ones who were smart, well, first of all, the intelligentsia were left in 1933. People who were sort of negatively inclined thought things were going to get worse, and they left. But most of the German Jews said every time that something got more difficult for the Jews, they said, well, now that this is in law, it can't get any worse. And of course, it always got worse. Well, of course, we have our anti-Semitism here, and we say, well, this is it. It can't get any worse. Really? That is how we got out of Germany, and that is why I'm here today. Now, I have a little poem that I was managing to compose about the Holocaust, and if you permit me, let me recite it for you. It all had started in Germany. With hate, the Nazis got tough. We Jews were placed in jeopardy. That should have been enough. At first, the Jewish economy, with a legislative shove, was strangled without ceremony. Why was that not enough? Out with our government leaders, with teachers, they got rough, ignored by worldwide readers. Oh, let that be enough. They singled out our writers. Get rid of that Jewish stuff. Our books burned with their lighters. When will that be enough? On Crystal Night, they wrecked our homes. Our synagogues were snuffed. They beat us, jailed us, broke our bones. For them, That's not enough. The war escape was ended. Their plans got more fired up. A final solution was rendered. How was that not enough? They drove us into the ghettos. They made us a wretched lot, hardly a bread or potatoes. We weep and cry, enough. The trains then started moving to concentration camps where life and death decisions were made on the railroad ramps, with gas where we thought there were showers, like chickens are killed in a pen, surrounded by wire and towers, our children, our wives, our men. Where were you, God? What was your part? Why were the chosen us? Towards what end, we ask you, Lord, were 6 million souls enough? Thank you very much.
We rise as we are able for the Holocaust Mourners Kaddish. Yit Gadal, Auschwitz, Birkenau, Buna, Barnikova, Bergen-Belsen, Beit Kadash, Belzig, Bialystok, Babi Yar, Shemei Rabbah, Bochnia, Vagranovka, Buchenwald, Yalmad Divrach Rute, Chelmno, Krakow, Dachau, Yamlich Machlote, Dokova, Danica, Dora, Bechayechon, Uvyomechon, Dumanvoga, Ebensi, Edeneti, Flossenburg, Uvechayedechol Beit Yisrael, Gross Rosen, Gunskirchen, Gurs, Bagala, Ovizman Kariv, Herzengenbusch, Lassi, Yadovna, Kaiserval, V'imru Amen. Yahei Shmei Rabba Mevorach, Leolam, Leomeo Maya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, Kamenetz, Podolsky, Kishniev, Kovno, Kluga. V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, Lod, Lubin, Lublin, Lvov, Lyon, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, Madyanik, Mauthausen, Minsk, Natzweiler, Struthof, Nuremberg, V'yatale, V'yitalal, Oradov, Plashlov, Papenburg, Ponary, Shemei de Kudisha, Brecho, Prague, Radom, Ravensbrück, Remsdorf, Riga, Leela, Schossenberg, Schossenhausen, San Suba, Shaolai, Min Kol Birchata Vishirata, Skarskisko, Sobibor, Tushbechata, Venechamata, Theresienstadt, Tromsner, Treblinka, Viera, Damiran Bialma, Vilna, Warsaw, Zem, Zitomar, V'imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. We're seated.
We're going to sing the hymn of the partisans. I would appreciate those who have Abyssal Yiddish to join in. And then you'll see, this is on, there's no page numbers in the book, but you'll see hymn of the partisans, Zogne Kemel, and it's also in English. Zogne Kemel as du gest im Lenzen Weg, chosch de Chimmen bleien farsten en bleuteg, kommen weg nach unser ausgebenten Show, svet apochter unser tot mir seinen da, kommen weg nach unser ausgebenten Show, svet apochter unser tot mir seinen da. Never say that this is the final road for you. The leaden skies may cover over days of blue. As the hour that we longed for is so near, our steps speed out the message, we are here. As the hour that we longed for is so near, our steps speed out the message, we are here.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Halber. I'm the CEO of the JCRC of Greater Washington. Every year that survivors are able to be here for this program is a true blessing and gift. We cherish their amazing resilience in the face of pure evil, their determination to survive and thrive, and their commitment to teaching young people about the horrors of the Shoah. We must not forget. We must always raise our voice against hate and bigotry of every kind that allowed the Holocaust to happen. The Jewish people have stared annihilation in the face several times, and each time we have prevailed. So too shall we in our current battle with the terrorists who slaughtered hundreds of innocent Israeli civilians on October 7th, and those around the world who unimaginably applaud such cruelty. It's a stark reminder of how it came to be that 6 million Jews were exterminated while many in the world stood silent. And it's a reminder of a need for a strong Israel and an American Jewish community that relentlessly advocates for its values and priorities. I wanted to note the presence today of several legislators who joined us and thank them: Council President Kate Stewart, Council members Andrew Friedson, Council member Sidney Katz, Council member Evan Glass, and Delegate Ryan Spiegel, and Delegate Leslie Lopez. Now, before we conclude with Hatikva, I have to say, I'm going off script, what a wonderful turnout this is. That the first time we've brought this back in person in 7 years, and we'll do it again. But you got to show up next year and bring your friends and make sure that this is a living memorial and that our numbers only grow stronger. Okay, that's a promise everybody has to make today. So before we start with Hatikva, I want to thank Mandy Book, Sarah Winkleman, and the rest of the JCRC staff that worked tirelessly to coordinate today's program, and our wonderful hosts at the Bender JCC, particularly Josh Bender, Marcy Blackman, and Maital Regev, and the members of the Holocaust Committee who work year-round, planning every detail to make sure that this is an honorable commemorative event, and a special dedication to the leadership that have made this an enormous success: Dr. Ron Paul, Ellen Blaylock, Ira Bartfield, and Al Bloomfield. This year, our chief synagogue partners was Adat Shalom Reconstructionists. Thank you, Rabbi. Congregation Bethesda, Congregation Adat Re'im in Springfield, as well as many other supporting synagogues. Institutional partners, Jessa, which supports more than 300 Holocaust survivors in our community, and the Jewish Federation for his support of the JCRC. Everyone who played a role in today's program: keynote speaker Frank Cohn, Colonel Cohn. I could have listened to you for another hour. Just anytime you want to come back, mic's yours. What an extraordinary story of survival. What a precious man. Thank you to our candle lighters, our pledge leaders, and rabbis, and especially our students who represent the best of our future. And thank you for our financial supporters who helped to make this event possible. And thank you all for being here today. Please rise if you can and join the Matanots as they perform Israel's national anthem, Hatikva. Thank you for joining us. That concludes our program. The JCC has a display of Holocaust commemorative materials throughout the JCC. If you'd like to go ahead and take a look and see it.